Hi folks, so today I wanted to bring to you Amir Tsarfati's weekly newsletter. This is for the 2nd of November 2023, it was just published this morning. You can subscribe to the newsletter by visiting beholdisrael.org and you'll find the option to subscribe on the front page if you scroll down. But let's dive into this information together. I've included images from Google that I found to kind of help paint the picture of what Amir is talking about in his newsletter. All right, so the Israeli ground assault is continuing in Gaza. The plan, as depicted here in this image, is ultimately to cut the Gaza Strip into two parts. This will allow the IDF, or the Israeli Defense Forces, to ultimately wrap around and eventually surround the Shifa hospital, which is the main hospital in Gaza and an operation base for Hamas. So this is kind of what we're seeing here. In light blue are areas that is the Israeli IDF has operations within Gaza. The green territory is Gaza, dark blue is Israel, and we can see here that there's a pincher movement going on as they are attempting to break through to the coastline and then surround the Shifa hospital. Now, before I jump into that, the New York Times is kind of saying, see, we told you Israel likes to bomb hospitals, and we've seen air raids from Israel near hospital regions. Let me tell you why they're doing that. So let's look at this image here. This picture on the left-hand side is showcasing Gaza City, and here we can see this little red H symbol represents the Al-Shifa hospital, which is what the IDF is targeting. Within that hospital compound, built both above and below the ground, we have Hamas main headquarters, as shown on the right-hand image. Everything in red here is a location for the Hamas command and control centers within the Shifa hospital, underneath the Shifa hospital. If Israel really didn't care about civilians, they would have dropped a whole bunch of bunker buster bombs on the Shifa property and been done with it. Instead, they are making a risky maneuver so that they can target Hamas terrorists, all the while announcing what they're doing so that the hospital and the surrounding area can be emptied of civilians. Once again, we see the difference between Hamas and the IDF. Hamas targets innocent civilians. The IDF warns civilians so that they can escape. The reason that we have non-combatants killed is because Hamas forces them to remain behind to act as a human shield around Hamas so that they can then take the bodies afterwards and use that as propaganda for the world media. Now, Gaza has had billions of dollars poured into it. Where has it all gone? First, to the Hamas leaders. Hamas Deputy Chairman Musa Abu Marzouk, on the right-hand side here, is worth $3 billion. Former chairman Khalid Mashal in the middle is worth $4 to $5 billion, and current chairman Ismail Haniyeh is also worth $4 to $5 billion. It's understandable though, because it takes a lot of money to pay for luxury housing in Turkey and Qatar. You couldn't expect them to live among Gaza in the riffraff, could you? Most of the remaining money that went into Gaza went to the construction of intricate multi-leveled systems of 1,300 tunnels that stretch for about 500 kilometers. That's 311 miles, and they reach up to 70 meters deep or 229 feet deep. Here is a photo on the right-hand side of the extent of that tunnel system back in 2021. And on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, we have an example of what that tunnel system looks like. But the flaw in the tunnel system is that it needs gas for generators to power the ventilation system. So while there's food and water in Gaza, as well as electricity in most areas, gas is very difficult to find. And this is because the IDF has confiscated as much of the gas as they can find. No gas, no ventilators. No ventilators, no air, no air. The terrorists are then forced to scurry out of their holes where they can surrender or be eliminated. Now let's talk about Lebanon and Syria. Iran, not pictured very clearly on this map, but Iran desperately wants their militias in southern Syria here to do something directed at Israel. So far, there has only been the occasional rocket or artillery fire. Hezbollah in Lebanon is receiving the same pressure from Iran. The skirmishes around the Lebanese-Israeli border have been more intense than those in Syria, but they have still mostly been in the form of rockets and airstrikes. However, there have been border breaches that had to have been dealt with by the IDF. Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General here of Hezbollah, has announced that he will make a very important speech this Friday, November 3rd at 3 p.m. The speculation is that he might declare Hezbollah's entrance officially into the war. Now, this would be unfortunate for two reasons. First of all, the Lebanese don't want war. Most civilians in Lebanon are good, hardworking people who are in the unfortunate situation of having their country commandeered by a terrorist organization whose puppet strings are being pulled by Iran's radical Islamist regime. Maybe this will be the catalyst for the people to finally rise up and oust Hezbollah. The second reason Nasrallah should think carefully before entering into the fray is that him doing so would be a fatal mistake. Because of the organization and training of Hezbollah, it would likely take more Israeli lives to end Hezbollah. But rest assured, by the time the IDF has finished, there would be no more Hezbollah and no more Hassan Nasrallah. Last night, Ismail Qayani, commander of the Quds Force of Iran Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, visited Beirut, likely to discuss Hezbollah's involvement in the next phase of the war. So we need to really pray that this front is not going to open wide. Today, as of November 2nd, there has been a pretty major increase in fighting on the Lebanese border with the IDF troops. All right, next we have the Houthis of Yemen. They have declared war officially against Israel. Now you might wonder why this 50,000 strong rebel army based 1,000 miles away from Israel is declaring war. Because they too are funded and directed by the Ayatollahs in Tehran. These extremist Shiites have long-range ballistic rockets, and they have fired them at Israel. At least one was destroyed by a U.S. Navy ship. Another was taken out while still in space by Israel's new Arrow 3 hypersonic anti-ballistic missile system. So far, they've just fired missiles at Israel. But if one of those ballistic missiles finds its target, there would be mass casualties. This is a map that showcases Iran as well as the nations that it supports, that are supported by Iran, and then it also points out the location of where Israel is in the midst of all of this. So what do all of Israel's enemies have in common? It's a fealty to Iran. The Iranians have a bit of a superiority complex when it comes to their fellow Middle Easterners. If there's dirty work to be done, they would much rather it be done with Arab hands. They have Persian hands, too finely manicured for grunt work. And this is why they created the militias. Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Houthis, the Kataib, Sayyid al-Shuhada, and all the others. They are all the Persians fighting for us because it's no use spilling Iranian blood when there's so many Arabs just hanging around. And Amir goes on, he says, I know my words sound harsh and incredibly callous, but they are 100% accurate when it comes to the attitudes of the Islamist regime in Tehran. If Hezbollah and the militias in Syria attack from the north, Israel knows who is behind it, and when the time is right, there will be a reckoning. Now, the Egyptian government is finally opening a field hospital on their side of the Rafah crossing. What they are not doing is opening wide their gates to an influx of Gazans. Why? Because they know the violence and trouble that comes with them. The Egyptian prime minister is so determined to keep Gazans out of the country that he recently has said he is prepared to sacrifice millions of lives to protect the border from Palestinians. When it comes to relations with Israel, there continues to be the same surface coolness between the two countries, yet behind the scenes, there is a secret cooperation. Jordan remains at peace with Israel. They're the eastern neighbors. Their concern is mainly with missiles in Syria and Iraq, and they have asked for the United States to deploy Patriot systems to protect the skies above their country, as we can see on the right-hand side here. Now, this is a showcasing of Israel's diplomatic ties with Arab countries, as well as individual countries that have entered into the Abrahamic Accords with Israel. Each of these countries of Saudi Arabia, who hasn't yet made an official peace agreement with Israel, but Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, and Bahrain, each of these has made it clear that the Abraham Accords and future peace deals are here to stay. Both Russia and Iran want to drive a wedge between the Saudis and the Israelis because of energy, but their ploys aren't working. The UAE has indicated that a strong relationship with Israel is our future, while the Bahrainis said keeping a relationship with Israel is in their common interest. Remember, when the Ezekiel 38 war launches, these countries will remain out of the battle, and they will strongly criticize the nations that do attack Israel. Now, the United States has been Israel's best friend through this fight, and the Israelis are very grateful for their help. Unfortunately, American bases in Syria and Iraq are paying the price. On an almost hourly basis, Iranian militias are attacking the U.S. military with rockets and suicide drones, and the American casualties are mounting. As concerning as these developments are overseas, we should also be just as equally concerned for the United States mainland. There are many terrorists that have emerged into the constant immigrant flow, and now the FBI has announced that they are nervous about attacks taking place in the U.S. cities that may be inspired by what Hamas did on October 7th. There's also a new cultural divide that's taking place between virulent Palestinian supporters and those who criticize the horrors that Hamas perpetrated. Much of this ignorant hatred is originating in American academia. The U.S., however, continues to maintain a powerful presence. They have 2 aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean and a consistent flow of aircraft as well, bringing supplies to Israel and to troops stationed throughout the Middle East in bases in Jordan, Iraq, Bahrain, and Syria. Now, in Europe, there's a massive division between Europeans and the enormous Muslim population that now exists in their cities due to the open border policies. The tension between the old guard and the newcomers is getting stronger. For so long, European governments refused to admit that there was a problem, but as Ayn Rand once said, quote, "You can avoid reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality," unquote. Now, I'm afraid that those consequences are just around the corner. It may well be that the war in Israel pushes Europe over the brink. As the anti-Israeli protests swell and the number of Jewish houses that are being spray painted with Stars of David grow, it is very likely that at some point there will be a flashpoint that occurs that sets the streets on fire. Now, on paper, in Turkey, Turkey and Israel are considered allies, but President Erdogan wants to be seen as a strong Muslim leader. Just this past week at a massive rally celebrating Turkish independence, he took the opportunity to go on a very anti-Semitic rant, including making it clear that he doesn't consider Hamas to be a terrorist organization. But even as he says those things, he does allow 2 American B-1 bombers to land in Turkey in case they're needed against Hezbollah. Erdogan is trying to straddle 2 worlds, but he will have to choose one side or another soon. Again, because we know Ezekiel 38, we recognize that Turkey will not be on Israel's side. Now, this is a graph here showcasing Jewish dispersion throughout the diaspora, with darker blue indicating a heavier population of Jewish individuals globally. All the Hollywood Jews had a very bad day last week when they suddenly woke up and realized that being liberal and progressive isn't enough. Many discovered that their friends had begun to abandon them for the sin of being Jewish. They thought that the world was beyond hating Jews just because they are Jews, but the world was just taking a little break. Now, anti-Semitism is back in vogue. In Germany, cases of anti-Semitism have risen 240%. In Austria, 300%, South Africa, 720%, and in the UK, 1,351%. There is a very dark cloud covering the world right now. Standing with Israel is soon going to exact a price. It may be relational. It may become physical. What we are seeing is symptomatic of the growing influence of the enemy. It is truly diabolic, and you will not understand it until you put your spiritual glasses on. But it is what we as believers expect, because we know that this world is being prepared for the day when there will be a single leader who will rise up with the power of Satan himself. And in that day, all who are still left in this world will follow him. You don't want to be around when that happens, because it will be a period when God's judgment will come down upon this world. It will be a time unlike any other, when the Lord sets out to discipline his people and punish those who have rejected him. But you don't have to be here. The Bible tells us that salvation is a matter of believing and receiving Jesus, Yeshua, as your Lord and Savior. If you want to know more about how to become a follower of Yeshua, send me a DM. if you're watching this on Instagram or on TikTok, or you can follow the link on YouTube in the description box. Now, Amir adds the following. He says, and I'll quote directly, "On a very personal note, may I please ask you for prayer for my heart and my mind. With all the evil that I am exposed to, I am constantly under attack. The little sleep I get is often filled with visions and scenarios of the horrors that I have seen. I do not fear for myself or my nation. God is prepared to fight our battle for us. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God." Psalm 20, verse 7. "My request is simply for the Lord to give me occasional relief from the oppressive effects of witnessing such darkness, and that he grants me some blessed sleep uninterrupted by violent dreams. Thank you, and may God bless you for praying." So again, this brings me to the conclusion of today. This was the November 2nd, 2023 newsletter from Behold Israel. You can find this at beholdisrael.org. If you pop over to the main page and just scroll down, there's a little link that'll allow you to subscribe to this newsletter, and you can get it in your email weekly. Updates from Amir are available at beholdisrael.org. He's also present on Telegram at beholdisraelchannel. Thank you for your time. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and send me a comment. Let me know what you think about our content for today. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you.